Welcome to the Maria Liberati Show, where food meets art, travel, and life. So, what does food mean to you? Join me in this segment for an interview with Paul B. Kennedy. He is a professional chef and he's joining us from Hanoi, Vietnam. He is an expert in Vietnamese cuisine. And I also want to announce that I will be doing on March 26th a special spring-themed Italian food and wine pairing four-course dinner at the Ridgewood Winery in Bechtelsville, Pennsylvania. And for anyone that is listening to the podcast, it's only for my podcast listeners, you will receive a $5 discount on eventbrite.com if you put in the code food and wine 5. Again, it's Food and Wine 5, and you can find the event on eventbrite.com. Again, it's Sunday, March 26th from 1 to 4 p.m. It is a four-course spring-themed Italian food and wine pairing. And, you know, the wines at Ridgewood Winery have won a lot of awards also. So please join us for some great food and wine. And again, you can register at eventbrite.com. If you have any questions about the event, you can also email me at info@marialiberati.com. And today we're here with Paul Kennedy, who is, well, first of all, we're traveling to Hanoi. Paul is in Vietnam, and it's actually 9 a.m. where I'm at on the East Coast, but it's 9 p.m. for him. He is, well, he's a chef, he's an entrepreneur, he's a book author, and he's mostly what we're going to be talking about today. He's an expert on Vietnamese cooking, although he's a talented chef, graduate of Johnson and Wales, right, Paul?
Correct, Johnson and Wales.
Yeah, so, but anyway, Paul, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you for having me.
So I guess we'll start off with, are you originally from Vietnam or are you from the U.S.?
I'm from the U.S. I grew up outside of D.C. in Virginia, Northern Virginia.
Okay.
Moved to Charleston. So I went to Johnson and Wales before they moved their campus to Charlotte. And then I went up to New York, which is where I was before coming here.
Okay, and that it doesn't matter. The only reason I was asking that, because I was going to ask you, so how did you find yourself in Vietnam?
I took a birthday trip that got extended by choice, spontaneity, and I decided to just keep traveling. And when I got to Hanoi, I decided to stay.
There you go. You liked it so much.
It's a gorgeous place. My trip was not, there was no intent to travel and stay. There was a possible intent to travel, to extend my vacation. I did do that, but I didn't think I would not go back.
Wow.
And I'm on my fourth year, 3.5 years.
Wow. So I know you, yes, and I know before we get into cooking the Vietnamese cuisine, you told me that you opened up, is it a hotel or a hostel there?
Well, pre-COVID, they're on pause now, but when I got to Hanoi, I first opened a hostel, and then I opened a hotel, and then I opened a travel agency. But we have no travel. We have nothing going on right now. We're hoping to reopen tourism next month. Whether or not I continue with everything, I don't know. Okay. But that's what I did when I got here.
Okay. And all right, so I guess, you know, I love having chefs that specialize in different cultures, because I think it's so much fun to try out and expand your cultural palette, right? And because there's so many different tastes and things like that. So tell us a little bit about, I guess, can you do like a quickie mini primer on Vietnamese cuisine?
Vietnamese cuisine is few utensils or cooking vessels. So it's usually one knife, one pot. Very little protein. A lot of herbs and greens.
Yes.
Moderate sugar.
So it's healthy.
That's really
Healthy
That's the gist
cuisine.
of the cooking.
Oh, wow. And what is there an herb or, I know like for instance in Italian cooking, basil, rosemary, oregano are like really the popular herbs that are used. Is there any, it sounds like they use lots of herbs, but if I asked you like what's a really popular either spice or herb in Vietnamese cooking, what would that be?
They use a lot of basil, perilla
They
leaves. They
do.
use a lot of bitter greens. However, what
Uh-huh.
I've realized is that the herbs here
Uh-huh.
are have a different taste than they do in the US
Do they really?
because we have a lot of oversight. So we have consistency in the US. And here it's a lot of people growing in their yards and different varieties that they don't know about.
Mm-hmm.
So the flavor is completely different. The herbs are fresher.
Right.
The spices can go either direction. They can be
Uh-huh.
weaker or stronger than what we get in the little McCormick's jar at Wegmans or Safeway or
Yes, yes,
Food Lion,
yes, yes.
but big
So
differences,
big
big
differences.
differences, big
So
differences.
tell us like what, I know Italian cooking, right? So I'm gonna say spaghetti or,
Right?
lasagna or pizza. So what is a popular, like a couple popular dishes for Vietnamese cuisine?
I think the three that they're known the most for is the banh mi, which is the sandwich.
Oh, they have a
Um, in
sandwich.
in the US, it's completely different than it is here because everything's westernized that we're used to.
Uh-huh.
But like you and I were talking about, it's normal for a country to customize it to their own palates. So it's normal for it to be different. Pho, which is their soup,
Uh-huh.
noodle soup with either chicken, beef, etc.
Huh?
And the third one's spring rolls.
Oh,
Those three
spring
are
rolls. So
the
everybody,
most
so
common.
tell me, do we, because I know, in America, they westernize, they really like, it's really Italian American cooking in most restaurants. And I know Chinese stuff is kind of like Chinese American, it's not
Right?
real Chinese. So the spring rolls, is there a difference from the spring rolls we would have in Vietnam to say the stuff they serve here in the US?
Definitely, because again, the herbs are heavy on the herbs here. So in the US, you'll see dishes with a lot of salads on the side. Not necessarily the spring rolls, but in general,
Right.
that's how we eat our greens. Here, they eat their greens in the dishes, in the actual
Oh,
court,
so
the
in
entree.
this spring roll, there's
A
more
lot
green,
of herbs,
a lot
a
more
lot of
herbs.
herbs. But
Oh,
it's funny you mentioned the lasagna because I tried making that here. First of all, I had spaghetti here at restaurants, and it's nothing like the spaghetti we're used to. It's so sweet. But I tried making lasagna to, again, share what, some of the dishes
yes,
that we make in the US, and
yes.
you can't even source the ingredients to make it correctly.
Oh, you're kidding.
It's just impossible.
Possible.
You can't buy 80/20 meats. You can't buy um, lasagna noodles are the only thing that you could probably source that's similar.
Uh-huh.
Um,
So what
but
about like
the rest of you can't.
the flour, like even 00 flour? Can you get that type of flour there?
Well, you would never find something labeled like that. You would find typically flour bought, it would be in a large unmarked container. And your guess is as good as theirs as to what kind of flour it is.
Oh,
It could be
wow.
baking flour,
So
it
it's
could be
just,
anything. And the same with baking.
uh-huh.
They just don't know what baker's sugar is or the difference between that and confectioner. They just don't know
Wow.
because they'll need
So
to.
they don't, so desserts, what is a typical dessert? I guess I should have asked that then. What's a typical dessert?
Um, they they have these desserts that have pork floss and egg yolks.
Oh, wow.
So they'll incorporate proteins into their desserts as well.
Uh-huh.
So
So no
I remember
brownies or chocolate, big chocolate cakes or anything like that.
the cakes they don't like as sweet. They do moderate sugar across the board.
Uh-huh.
Sugar in their lunches and their soups and everything. So when it comes to
I
dessert, they
see.
don't like it as sweet. And that's something else I tried making for
Yes.
people. I tried
Yes.
making all these different desserts and everyone too sweet, way too sweet. Just normal buttercream frosting,
Right. Too
impossible for them to
sweet.
eat.
Wow. So it sounds like
Impossible.
they put sugar like you said, a moderate, just a small amount of sugar in a lot of their dishes.
and
So then they
and
don't really
everything.
want the, the sweet. They don't want the sweet then. And so they're not really interested in the desserts, which is not a
No.
bad thing.
And I'll see the sharing's big, family eating family style. And when they
Oh,
do, they might have a can of Coke,
uh-huh.
which surprises me because they don't
Yeah,
like sweet things.
sweets.
And then you realize, oh, they share that can of Coke amongst 2 or 3 people.
Oh, so it's just a
So
real, it's a little,
it's a piece of Coke. So when
yes,
they do have high sweet things, um, it's very nominal amounts,
it's just a little amount. Yes.
just a
I
little.
wanted to ask you about the sandwich because I know you said like in America, we Americanized the sandwiches. So just tell me the sandwich, that first one you mentioned, it began with
The
a
banh
B.
mi,
What
the
was
banh
that?
mi,
Oh,
banh mi.
banh mi. Uh-huh. And what kind of bread do they use?
Well, that's the key part to it. So banh mi just means bread.
Oh,
In the US, the banh mi is always pickled vegetables with some sort of pork meat. And they'll usually have sriracha and I think maybe mayonnaise or something.
right.
We don't rarely use sriracha, mayonnaise, not for that. It
Uh-huh.
just means the bread. So if you go get banh mi, it can
Right.
be a fried egg on it. It can be pate. It can be anything. There is no standard.
Uh-huh.
But in the
And
US, if you say banh mi, you're getting the one with the pork and the pickled vegetables. That's just the
oh,
one
yes,
that you get everywhere that you rarely see here.
they are. But what
Rarely.
kind of bread do they have? Is it the
It's
crusty bread or like
it's
the soft?
French bread. It's
Oh,
French bread. Don't forget we were occupied. I say we
oh,
because
yes,
I'm
by
in Hanoi.
France. Yes.
So they were occupied by the French. So everything is heavily influenced by the French. The soup, the pho,
Uh-huh.
is from them. The French bread, the pate,
Uh-huh.
all the dishes have some sort of extremely heavy influence from them.
From the
So the
French.
only thing banh mi is, the trick to the banh mi is it has to be a crispy outer crust with the baguette.
I see.
So, and then extremely soft in the center.
Uh-huh.
So that's what makes the banh mi. Everything else, you throw it out the window. It has to be the bread for it to be banh mi. It has to be
And
correct.
it doesn't really matter then. It sounds like what's inside. It can
It
be
doesn't.
really anything inside. Yes.
In the morning, you'll have the fried egg, maybe fried egg with pate. In the
Huh?
afternoon, you might have meatballs.
Uh-huh.
In the evening, you might have pork barbecue,
Uh-huh.
anything. But it
So
just has to do with the bread,
it has to do
only
with the
bread,
bread.
only bread.
So is there, I think you said they are kind of lighter though on meat. It's mostly herbs and vegetables. Is that right? Or is it heavily eating meat?
Mm, Very light with the meat. The only time it's heavy is if it's a processed meat.
I
So they
see.
make these meat cakes.
Mhm.
And it would be similar to if I said, can you thick cut that bologna for me?
Huh?
Because it's a really thick,
Oh my
any
gosh.
kind of processed meat. That's the only time it's really heavy on the meat. But
Heavy
even
on
then,
meat.
they watch their portions.
Exactly. So if you could tell us, I was trying to, and it's, you know what, I'm guessing because they were occupied by the French, and French is cooking is typically complicated, where Italian cooking, you could say it could be pretty simplistic. So I know you told me Vietnamese cooking can be a little complicated, right?
Right. It's
So what
complicated. It's time consuming.
time consuming. So what I was going to ask, is there any dish now, some of that stuff you mentioned, yes, it's gotten popular in the US, but there are US versions of what the Vietnamese cooking is. But
Normal.
yes, is there any way you could recommend for somebody, like if they wanted to try out some flavors at their home, what could they do? Is there anything they could do that's kind of simple or
Well, that's the tricky part. And what really got me into how to tie together their culture with the food
yes,
was the underlying flavor of, say, pho, the soup,
yes,
is cinnamon. Yes. So here you don't you only cook with local ingredients. It's farm to
Right.
table a
Definitely.
1,000 times.
Right.
So the pho you have in every village will be different because they
Uh-huh.
only cook with their ingredients. So it's sweeter in the south. It's not as sweet in the north.
Uh-huh.
Herbs are different on the side. It's not on the side. But
Uh-huh.
the cinnamon is a prevailing flavor. You go, wow, that's really unique.
Oh, yes, that is unique.
So the tough part with picking a specific flavor that is Vietnamese is understanding cinnamon and how it's going to taste different depending on where you buy it and
Yes.
where that cinnamon came from.
Hmm.
That's a really difficult part because even for me, cinnamon's gonna be completely different. I know in the US, once you find it, it'll
Uh-huh.
be consistent.
Yes.
So it's the opposite. So
Uh-huh.
the trick is, it's kind of like nutmeg in the US. When you cook with
Uh-huh.
nutmeg, you just want it to be able to taste it. You want to know it's
Right.
there, but not to be the predominant flavor with nutmeg. It's the same with
Yes.
cinnamon here. You
Uh-huh.
want the hint, you want to be able to identify it, but you
Uh-huh.
want it to take you a second to identify it.
Wow.
You want to be able to go, I taste it, I taste something. What is that? Nutmeg.
Yes.
Got it. So that's the same way they use cinnamon here.
Uh-huh.
That's the same way.
That's the same way. And I think in the US, we're either a lot of the ingredients that they sell at the supermarkets are so kind of watered down. So we have to use a lot of something. There's a lot of cellulose and different things. And,
Yes.
or we're just spoiled that it's so prevalent. So we tend to use a lot of everything. But when you're using fresher ingredients, I always say this, and real authentic, you only need a little bit, so that that could be the reason also. So I know you have a book coming out. When is it supposed to be out? Do you know yet?
Don't have the exact date. We're hoping the end of this year.
Okay. And I know with everything going on, I have a book coming out too, and things are always getting pushed back and all
Nice.
kinds of but okay, so we can look for your book. And is that going to marry sort of the culture with the recipes? Also tell us a little bit about the culture, or just mainly the recipes?
It is. I'm trying to make it a book that you can flip through, a
Oh,
coffee
great.
table book.
Yes.
So it has recipes,
Uh-huh.
authentic Vietnamese recipes, but it
Yes.
also has a little bit of tidbits about Vietnam
That's
because we
great.
really don't know. Most people in America don't know outside of Vietnam War. They don't know much about it. And they think you need
Exactly.
a machete to get to your hotel because but Hanoi is a city.
Is
It's
it
almost as big
city?
as New York.
Uh-huh.
It has mid rises versus high rises, but there's still about 9 million people here.
Oh, wow.
So it's still a city, but it's different. And understanding the culture, once you understand the culture, you understand the people. And it's the same with the food, learning through the food. I think
And
you
I
agree with
I
that.
always think it's so important. I love it that you're going to have tidbits, because it's really important. Many of these cultures, have their culture is so tied to the food. And that's what also makes it so interesting, and it's just really an experience because you're actually experiencing culture. So I think that's a really, really important part also. So I want to ask you this question. I usually ask this to my guests. I forgot to tell you
Uh-oh.
before we started, but this is difficult. Here's the difficult part. No, I just always ask, because you're a chef, so food must
Yes.
mean something to you. What does food mean to you?
Food means something I can say. It means something
Yes.
completely different now that I have lived in Hanoi.
Uh-huh.
Completely different.
Wow.
It's not a pleasant story, but I've got to tell you, I saw, I hope this is okay.
Yes.
It's not gory.
Oh,
So I
okay.
saw a fatal accident recently. So it's a sad story
Uh-huh.
here in Vietnam with, everyone pretty much rides motorbikes. But
Okay.
I saw they had a couple of kilos of rice in the back and the rice spilt.
Uh-huh.
And in the US, I would be thinking of the body,
Mhm.
or the accident, the tragedy.
Great.
And my mind went straight to the rice, spilled all over the street, because I understand the importance of the food here.
Yes, yes.
Completely different. But it took me a minute going, what just happened?
Uh-huh.
Why am I, and I was just staring at the bag of rice and the rice all over the street.
Huh?
And all I could think of was that family's not getting rice.
Exactly.
Family's not getting rice.
Yes.
But it dawned on me how much I realized the importance of food and ingredients, without even understanding previously why. But watching someone eat every grain of rice, I understand the value, the
Yes.
importance, the hard work it takes to grow it.
Yes. Yes.
It's got
And
a true value besides money.
yes, and I think that's so important. And sometimes in the US, because we're so spoiled, I learned that too by living overseas, that they appreciate, their
Oh,
food.
so
And, at one point in Italy, they used to actually kiss the bread because it was so hard to come by, and people don't,
right.
thank goodness we never had to experience that here. I mean, I'm hoping, people don't. Obviously, some people have, most cultures really respect food. So I thank you. That's a beautiful answer. Thank you. That's great. So, Paul, I know you have a website too where people can find recipes, right? Can they find
Yes,
recipes or, oh, great. Yes.
paulbkennedy.com.
I'm sorry, say
Paul
that
B.
again.
Paul B. Kennedy. B is my middle initial. B like
Yes.
boy.
Boy like boy,
paulbkennedy.com.
Kennedy.com. That's great. All right. Thank you so much for being here. And hopefully we'll get to have you come back when your book is out and you can share some more with us.
Sounds great. Thanks so much for having me, Maria. I appreciate it.
Thanks for being here. Thank
Great
you.
talking to you.
You too. Thanks for listening to the Maria Liberati Show, and thanks to my producer, Britton Roselle, and this week's special guest, Paul B. Kennedy. And I just want to remind you again that I will be doing a special spring-themed Italian wine pairing dinner at the Ridgewood Winery in Bechtelsville, Pennsylvania on Sunday, March 26th from 1 till 4 p.m. And for all my podcast listeners, you can get $5 off if you put in this code food and wine and the number 5. So that's FOOD and AND wine, WINE, and the number 5 when you go to eventbrite.com to register for the event. Again, put in that code food and wine 5. That is only for my podcast listeners. Hope to see you there. And as always, you can find my book series, The Basic Art of Italian Cooking. It did win the Gourmand World Awards. It won that award in 2010. And you can find the book series at artoflivingprimamedia.com and marialiberati.com and on Amazon and really anywhere books are sold online. You can also find me on Instagram at Chef Maria Liberati. I'm sorry, on Facebook at Chef Maria Liberati. On Instagram at Maria Liberati. On Twitter at Maria Liberati, my Roku channel, which is The Basic Art of Italian Cooking by Maria Liberati, and my YouTube channel. Please follow and share. And the YouTube channel is The Maria Liberati Show. And let's see. Oh, yes. And if you'd like to win some organic gluten-free pasta from Happy Brands, you can like and share this episode and hashtag it The Maria Liberati Show, and you'll be entered in a drawing to win some organic gluten-free pasta from Happy Brands. And we should be announcing a winner on the next episode, which will be on February 15th. So please like and share this episode or last week's episode where we announced the contest also, and you'll be entered in a giveaway for some organic gluten-free pasta from Happy Brands. And as always, until next week, peace, love, and pasta.